don't usually do this, but I want to because of the material we're covering. Give a disclaimer for myself. I'm in no way an expert on Oscar Romero and El Salvador people and all that took place. It's been, though, a bucket list dream to go to El Salvador, and it truly was a life-changing experience. So one of the things Enid and I agreed we would do is talk about this Saint Oscar Romero and just give a few thoughts on how we were kind of having a conversion experience to what we call the Saint Oscar Romero and really the El Salvador people and El Salvador martyrs. For myself, I have to trace it back. I was trying to think, I'm not sure, but on my first assignment as a seminarian, I served in Bluefield, West Virginia. And this was with another seminarian who actually served as a priest here too, Jose, in this area, not in this parish, but Jose Manuel Escalante. And him and I were actually ordained together. But he was the first, being from El Salvador and knowing of Oscar Romero, to really kind of introduce me to get to understand what took place there with the elite families, the government, and the whole kind of revolution that went on, and the perspective of the people and who Archbishop Romero really was. And I believe it was with him that I first saw the movie Oscar Romero. And to tell a story, the priest that we were working under, Father Jose and I, as seminarians at the time, he was, as priests do, Father Bill was going away for summer vacation. And we were in the living room watching the movie Romero. And without knowing it, the parish offices were being broken into. But I thought that was significant, and we found out later and all of that, because this was a very poor, oppressed area. And it was a place that even being there, a total different context of Appalachia, West Virginia, but helped me to understand how people can be held down and even in that environment. So I'm grateful for that first experience with what we know now, St. Oscar Romero.
I'm going to try to make this brief because my story of conversion is a little bit long, but the important part of it, I am a cradle Catholic, but those families that we are Catholic, but we go to church when we can, and that's what I learned, right? When I was about 15, 16 years old, in the high school, there was a group of young people who were always meeting at 12 o'clock under a tree. And, of course, they were not Catholic, right? So through them, I heard of course, do Mass. We hear the Gospel. We hear the Bible, the stories. But in there, it was done in a youthful way. They had music. It was very attractive. So I started falling in love with the way they worshipped. And so one day I went to my home and I told my mom that I wanted to go to another church, Wesleyan Church that was right across the street from the high school where I was going. And I have to tell you, my mother, who was a lukewarm Catholic, and that's, she will be alive today, she will tell you that's exactly what she was. So when I shared this, she had the experience of one of her sisters that was living under her care, converted and went to get baptized in a Baptist church, and she was beside herself. So she said, I don't want to lose one more. So she told me, listen, I am not against, I'm glad that you're meeting the Lord and you want to know more, but let's do this. Give me a month. And let me try to find something for you. And what you should do is to bring what you like from them to our church. And she found, lo and behold, 2 weeks later, she comes with this flyer and a retreat for young people. And it ended up being, how do you call that? Music ministry retreat in the charismatic movement. And I was in heaven when I got there. Alone, I didn't know anybody. But really, the Lord touched my heart so deeply that from then on, never let go. Okay? And so during those years when I was already at the university, I started looking for experiences of missionary work. And I do remember in 1980, when before Oscar Romero, the Merigno sisters that were murdered, and also there was a lay woman that was murdered too. Before they were murdered, they were raped and they were abused in so many ways. It must have been terrible. And I remember that was a reflection. The price we pay when we say yes to the Lord, to the point that we need to be willing to die for Him, right? So that was part of all that process where the Lord started calling me and moving me in different directions. Always in the Catholic Church, because thanks to my mom, I never divert from that, right? So I had a religious experience. I went to a community that I didn't stay for long, but that has been my past. 32 years ago, I was called to South Bend, Indiana, and I stayed there for 27 years, serving the Lord there. First with the migrants. The regional office for Hispanic Ministry that used to serve Wisconsin, Illinois, Ohio, Michigan, and Indiana. And then with the school corporation in South Bend, and then the calling from my bishop to direct the office for Hispanic Ministry there at the Diocese of Fort Wayne, South Bend. So it's been a path, right? A way of knowing the Lord and at the same time working with the Hispanic community that struggles here in the United States in so many ways, right? Especially in those first, in the 90s, when we started getting that big wave of people after Reagan was able to give the amnesty to many of our migrants. And that was an awakening of the migrant people here in the United States, especially the Mexican community, which in Indiana, it's about 95 to 97% of the Hispanic population there. So 5 years ago, it was time to look for something else, and the Lord gave me a kick in the behind, and then I needed to look for another job, and then all of a sudden, without really realizing, He already had something for me, right? And applied for the first time. This diocese was looking for a director for Hispanic Ministry, and that's how I landed here. When I got to Wheeling, they asked me, they said, well, there's work, but there's the larger concentration of people is in the Panhandle. And I said, I'll go wherever you tell me to go. So I take care of the whole diocese, but the concentration of our people is here. And we're trying for the last 5 years to give more care to the larger community. And my community is St. Joseph, but also we take care of St. James. And we have another 6 parishes around the diocese that have some kind of Hispanic ministry. And we're trying to make that grow. But I'm really honored. And also, I am so happy that this community is so open to want to help and do something about receiving the migrant community. It doesn't matter where they come. When you are from somewhere else, you feel alone. You feel you left everything behind, right? And finding a community that open their arms to you, it's very important. It's transforming, really. And it's what Christ would have done, right? So I'm really happy to be here. And that's part of my story. So we're going to start now with our trip, I think.
We thank Enid for being here and the ministry that she's doing. That's so important for our diocese. And it was Bishop Brennan that invited me to go, as well as Father Tommy Gallagher of St. Joseph, as part of the contingency of our diocese and a number of other dioceses right around us that of folks like Enid that are also involved in Hispanic ministries. So you see the flag there of El Salvador, and we'll move on to the first slide. I like to start by really maybe mentioning how we do theology at Vatican II. And a good example of that is our folks that are preparing for our CIA that have been in this process. We actually don't teach them sacraments until after Easter Sunday. And that's what they teach us to do. That's what the right, because we prepare them to have an experience of faith that they have. And then once they receive those sacraments, then they can often teach us. They teach us what they mean. They bring a freshness to that. And the reason I bring that up is it's also how we do theology as we kind of move out in the world. And a friend of mine calls it kind of like a reverse evangelization. So what I mean by that is some people would ask me when I was going to El Salvador, was I doing missionary work? And I say, no. I was going there to experience the people in church and be evangelized by the folks of El Salvador. And I see the wisdom on how our trip was formed and designed to see that. So what we call it, and it's part of our Catholic social teaching, is we see what's on the ground, we experience it, we listen. And then from that experience, we can make maybe some theological judgments of what that means. And then that calls us, well, what am I going to do now? How am I going to act and stand for justice? And we may not get through all of those, but this is the process that is to take place. And so our first image here is the Sisters of St. Joseph in San Salvador, right? Am I correct? Yeah, but Sisters of Charity, see? That's why I have Enid here. The Sisters of Charities that welcomed us, and this is where we stayed with them right in the city there. And just one thought that I have on that, they were singing, they were playing their guitars, and they said, "You are immigrants, we welcome you." And I've never been treated with more hospitality in my life from the people, from the religious Sisters of Charity, from Cardinal Gregorio Rosa Chavez that you'll hear about later. I don't know if you have any thoughts on it.
No, to all of us, the music, the sisters singing, the way they embrace us, right? That really was so touching to all of us. First of all, we started our trip leaving Priestfield around 11 o'clock at night, and our flight left at 3 o'clock in the morning. We got there at 6:30 in the morning, and right away we went to the convent. It was probably 9 o'clock in the morning, so we were really tired. Hardly, slept a wink. But that really picked us up. So we only had until about 12 to go to our rooms, rest a little bit, and then we headed out for our first part of our trip that was to the cathedral.
and we've done the slides a little different because I want to see the see, judge, act. So the next slide you can flip to. This is us starting our trip pretty early on, Enid and I. So we'll put in one picture in there. But it was beautiful sunset that evening as we were having dinner. And then we go to next one. So now we are in Soyapango.
Soyapango.
So this is the city we visited, the town where the Catholic Relief Services took us to really see on the ground what El Salvador was like. And this is one of the images that the local people painted on the wall here. And you can keep flipping. And it's supposed to show their hopes and dreams and the joys and struggles. Catholic Relief Services, they don't go in and do charity. It's important. What they do is they accompany the people and honor them in their culture. And they're what Pope Francis would say, the people themselves are agents and dreamers of their own destination. And so if you want to keep flipping, and you see the wall, and you can see as we go through a little bit with the community. Right there, this is the church at Immaculate Conception that we would visit. And I got a chance to meet the priest there. He was very impressive. He was been ordained, I think, only 5 years. But you talk about a Pope Francis priest that smells like his sheep, bruised, injured, and dirty, out on the streets, working right there, engaging with the people. I really admired him in this community and the work that they did. So if you flip again. So this is what a scholarship program known as the Romero Scholarship. And the way that it works, we heard from one young man and some others, another young woman, see her picture there, and some others that they received scholarships, but in that process, they went and they're to use that back within their community that they're from. One story was from a young man, and just to help you understand a little bit of the situation, what they were telling us is there's often a stigma for the neighborhood that they live in right now. And oftentimes what's happening in El Salvador now, people are picked up often with not a lot of due process. So it can be very difficult. You'll get mixed feelings about people in El Salvador, and if you talk to some of the locals, because it is, in one sense, they feel safer, but the other is it's a real problem when people are being picked up without due process. And that's what happened with this young man. And he was picked up by the government and the forces there. And when he was picked up, he told the story of, by the grace of God, his mom found him and got him out. And that sort of led him to the church in the community, and he would go on to get a college education. And he came back to, and I think he went to Catholic U. But as he got that education, one of the things he had to deal with was, that I understood, that I heard him saying was, to study with people that came from really pretty privileged backgrounds in the background he had. And yet now here he is, one of those agents of hope and dreamers in his own community due to this Romero scholarship program. And it was described to us by the people there that these are seeds of hope that are being planted to grow and to make a difference in their local community.
Can you go back to the slides where they have the mural? There you go. A little bit. There you go. That's that one. Okay, so a little bit of background story of this community that Father was describing really quick. So this place was built, it's called Comunidad 22 de Abril, 22nd of April community, right? And why that strange name? It's because this community was built on a landfill. There was nothing else in that place. They were so poor, they had nowhere to live. There was no chance for them to rent anywhere because there was no income. So they started building on the landfill. And what they did, and this, what they used was wood, zinc, whatever was they were able to put together and kind of build something, some structure up. And they started to build the community that way. And so the whole place is still, the underground is the landfill, is basura, right? So you can see, we can still see areas where there's no structure that you can see what the foundation is. And the mural was made by young people in that community. Because like he said, we were so surprised when we went in. The street goes up and up and up and up, and it keeps going up. And it's huge. It has several sections of it. And so the young people, to be able to live here, after a while, the gangs took over, and they had to check in and out. Nobody could freely come in or out of the community. They had to show their ID. They have to go through a lot of stuff. And when the young people will get to a certain age, they had to become part of the gang or the group that was there in charge of the community. And it was bad. So many parents opted for sending their children here to the United States without anybody, just to an address, to somewhere that person will help the child, keep them here until the parents at some point, if ever, could be able to provide for them and come to the United States also. So that's pretty much the story. That's why it's so important. These scholarships are so important. If you can go to the last one that you showed with yes, that one. So these are the young people, and this is the mother of this girl. She also is a graduate from the scholarship program, and she was telling us that she is the first one in generations of people who did more than high school. I mean, high school probably was the first big step that nobody has gotten to, and then college. And that's opening the doors for them for a different life than what they thought they were going to have as a whole, as a community, as a family, per se. Okay, so this is important for us. We think that this is probably one of the most important things that CRS is doing, and we can help to help these young people move forward in life and do better. And probably they don't have to be thinking about sending their children to the United States to have a better life. These kids are going back to El Salvador to give to El Salvador what is needed to succeed.
Okay, yeah. So, yeah, I can go to the Oscar. So that's at the cathedral where Oscar Romero was, but just an image if you don't know who he was. And so there's a lot of pen traced and ink and books written about Oscar Romero, and sometimes the word conversion is used that he had. I think it would be more accurate to say there was an evolution that he had. He was a good man. He cared about the poor. He grew up, and you'll see his neighborhood. But his approach was more a charity than a justice approach. And so if you flip to the next picture, this is Rutilio Grande. When Romero was made an archbishop, Rutilio was a close friend from seminary days, I believe, and was really responsible for a lot of his installation when he became a bishop. But Rutilio was out in the fields with the people and in the villages, and you'll see a little bit of what that looks like. But his assassination on March 12th, 1977 was certainly a turning point for Romero. And I'll go back to the See Judge Act. You have to understand, some of you that came up in the church before before Vatican II, Romero would have been trained in a process of theology that was known as neo-scholasticism. It's basically, it wasn't Thomas Aquinas, but it was built off of, it wasn't originally Thomas Aquinas, but it was kind of a defensive posture towards theology, where you really, here's what it looks like, here's what the questions are, here's the answer. Well, Vatican II was a big shift because, like I said, you went out to the people and you started from their experience, the see, the judge, and then the act. And so I think one of the things, at least my opinion, that I believe happened was this evolution of when Romero began to look at it from the perspective of the people and the injustices that were happening. And an assassination of a priest I don't believe would have been more important to him than anybody. However, it was a symbol. And from that, it was really where some of the protest and repression and Romero doing Rutilio's funeral mass and standing against the election and the government at the time and beginning to learn off of theologians like Leonardo Boff and others in liberation theology that he was pretty much coming down on in some ways before. That was an evolution that happened in St. Oscar Romero. You have any thoughts on?
So you remember who saw the movie Oscar Romero? Okay, very good. So we learned a lot of stuff over there because Cardinal Rosa Chavez was a good friend, and also he walked the path of Romero while he was alive. And he told us many things that we learned that were a little bit twisted in the movies. You know how it is. Hollywood tries to change some things to make it more dramatic. Some of the things is exactly what Father Andy said. It is also almost implied that because of the death of Rutilio Grande, that was a turning point of Oscar Romero, and it wasn't. He already... Like he said, yes, he was very hierarchical, and also he was a classist. I mean, he will be able to, I guess, because of the places where he was put, he will be the pastor of many affluent communities. And those were the people who looked for him. And later on, that would be the cause of his death, also, the way it was. But he already had an opening in his heart when he was made Archbishop. He started to see what was happening, and the people were telling him when he would go to the communities. The government were apparently buying their properties, but then they would never pay them for them, and they would be without the land that they needed to survive, and no remuneration for it either. So it was already a process that had taken him a while. But this death certainly was a very important moment for Oscar Romero.
Do you remember this, Enid?
Oh my gosh, that was our adventure. We were supposed to go to lunch to a place it's called El Limon, and is on top of a mountain. And the climb was, believe me, it was so inclined. Our boss was trying to go up. They had to make this so the tires will have more track. What happened was that the driver went too far to the side, and so because of the weight of the bus and us and all that kind of stuff, so it got the chassis got stuck under, and there was no way. We got out, everything, nothing worked. So some people decided to start walking. I have to tell you, it was probably over a mile and a half maybe to go up, all like this. I mean, no joke. There was no way for most of us to go up. Okay? The United States has spoiled us, but so we called. Even Bishop was sweating. I thought he could die in that trip. I mean, really, that day was really something. But the spirit of collaboration that was shown that day was amazing, really. The people who stayed behind and helped the driver, and the people from the restaurant that started coming to, haul some of us back to the place and stay there until we could get more help, because there was no way to move that thing. And eventually they did. But yes, and this is Father Acco. This is William from CRS. And the other pilgrims, that was Rafael from the Archdiocese of Washington. He does his reporter. And one of the sisters of the Mercy, right? The Siervas de la Misericordia, and the director for Hispanic Ministry for the Diocese of Baltimore. And Bishop, you recognize him? Bishop had his little hat. So that's a priest. You remember him? Okay. He's the director for Hispanic Ministry for Richmond, the Diocese of Richmond. Right. So that was a part of our adventure. So we thought it was important for you to see.
Keep going just to show that now. So that's Bishop Avelio. There's and he was and you may want to say, yeah, he's El Salvadoran, and he came here, and he wasn't a citizen when he came here, and now he's the auxiliary bishop of Washington, D.C. So, I mean, he was a huge blessing, and it was neat to be with him because he was really coming back as a bishop, a hometown hero. And I got to spend some time with him, and one was on the hike. But the blessing of that, it was that you got to understand a little bit what was happening out in the villages. He told the story that when people would come back, this was during the Romero days, when people would call from the States, there was one phone in the village, and the people out there working and living. So he was really enjoying himself. He was in his terrain, not exactly where he was from. But he also explained how, the issues with the military and how an ambush would take place in those days. And you can keep flipping. There he is sitting in the creek there. Go ahead, see what else. Okay, we'll stop there. But you saw the images and how an ambush, and he talked about how, one time some of his family was coming through, and they asked him if they saw any of, the guerrillas, and they said no, and they didn't. Well, later they found out that they were there, and it was very ugly for the family. And this was common things. This helps you understand the tension that was happening with Archbishop Romero, and then being out in the community and the stories that he was hearing and experiencing from the people. And so I'll pass this picture over to...
So this is the construction of the new templo, the Church of Divine Mercy. So the story is that Sister Reina, who is not here in that group, these are the new sisters from the community. The community was founded officially 8 years ago, and she already has almost 50 sisters. And it's by the providence of God. So she was from another community. She felt that God was asking her to found the community. She went to El Salvador when she was there, because she's originally from there. The Lord told her to go to Ocicala. And she said she didn't even heard ever about Ocicala. She had no idea where that was. So she started asking. Then she found it in the map. Some people took her there, and she started walking around until she found a place that had a possibility to be a temple, a church. And when she started walking the place, she knelt down and she started crying. And she knew at that point that was a place that God wanted her to build that church. So it's in construction right now. It's pretty advanced. Now it needs still windows and the floor and everything. But on April 7th this year, in about 2 weeks, they're going to inaugurate and consecrate the temple, because she says, the Lord says, they have to do it. And they're not ready to open. It's not done. But they want to start right away. So we ask for your prayers. And if at some point you feel compelled to make a donation to it, we have a way for you to be able to do donation directly to the sisters.
Thank you, Enid. This is for me, this was the hardest part of the trip. Mazuto, for all of us, I believe. And the best way I can describe the experience, it was like walking through the Garden of Gethsemane. And my numbers might be off, but the entire village was massacred. 800 men, women, and children. 989 men, children, and women. And this was only like a year after Romero's assassination, I believe. 82, 2 years after his assassination. And, so you can see the names there on the wall. And we're there at dark as well. And keep going. There you again. There another. And there, go to the, yeah. And this is where many of the burials right there had happened. And I just think of a story that local Jose that was on the trip told us. I don't know I bet you remember this, Enid, while we were there. He saw a man that seemed to be homeless, and he went to offer him his money. And he pointed out, and he said, I don't need your money, I need you to listen. And my family, this is what's happened here. And to get a sense of the effect, and 20 of his family members were killed. So this is the reality. This is not, this helps you understand what St. Archbishop Oscar Romero was facing as he stood for his people. You want to go to you got another one there. You see Bishop Velio there might be there's a little bit better of them. Yeah. I think that next one looks maybe a little, no. Well, I'll just say Bishop Avelio gave a little reflection, and we just saw the church and the divine mercy there, and I could tell how difficult this was for him and how moved he was. So when we gathered in that church there, he read us the Beatitudes, and he compared the church and the divine mercy to when he was in Poland in the concentration camps, and to connect the two of those, the atrocities of the human story like that, and yet how desperately as a world we're in need of divine mercy, and that image that the sisters and the work there not too far away where that church is being built. Okay, keep on going, and you see the image there and the children, folks. Next one. Okay, so this would be, yeah.
So if you can go back to El Mozote for a minute. I just, okay, another one. Back. Another one. So this, okay, so there was a chapel in the town where we went. So there was a very little chapel. That was where people used to worship, different times, but it was not really a church. It was a little chapel where they go to pray. And now they have reconstructed that. Around it, they did the kind of improvised cemetery. And the first part, they let us go, because after that big thing that happened with the truck that got stuck, our schedule got really delayed. We went to the sanctuary first, and then when we got to the Mozote, it was dark. It was already dark. We are close to the equator, so after 6 o'clock, there's already no light. So when we got there, everything was dark. There was one place that was on, and you could hear the music and some people in there. But somebody had the opportunity to turn on the lights outside, and we started walking in the security, right? And where they took us is the side of the church, where there was this place. It's not really big, but there is a special place because they interred all the children that were massacred in there. Just the children from 0 to 12. And we were all... It was heartbreaking. We were heartbroken because just to think, all the children. The problem was that community was neutral. They didn't want it to be with the government that was really repressive, or with the guerrillas that were also oppressive to the people, because whomever was with the government was against them, right? If you're not with us, you're against us. And it happened from both sides. So they will help to the guerrilla to be in the right side, and they will help also the military to be on the right side. They were abused by both, but because the government couldn't decide if they were part of theirs or they were the guerrilla, they decided to clean up the town, because they thought there was a lot of people infiltrating the town. And that's when the government, the militia, decided to swipe. So they started from the mountains going down. They closed all the exits, and they started going down. The instructions was not one soul alive. Everything that they found on the way had to be killed. No life. And that's the story of El Mozote. We heard the story of one woman who was a descendant of a whole family that died there on that day. It was the saddest thing that we have ever heard. And if we hear about repression, I have never seen anything so graphic and so moving, really, because if a government or whomever group decides that life is not worth a second thought, then we're in trouble as a human race. Okay. So this is what the name of the church is. Yes, he was baptized here. Right. He was baptized in this parish. It's in Barrios. And it's on top of a mountain. And also his first mass when he was made priest, he was ordained, he did here. And then a little down the street, there's another church where he was a priest there, a pastor. And we had mass in most of these places. We had mass once a day, and it was beautiful. A group of women received us, all laity, because their father, the priest, wasn't there. He was somewhere else taking care of the sick. So we had a great experience there. Let's see. Where the wedding? I didn't saw that part. Okay, that was inside. Okay, I stayed in outside. So that's the other church that was in the Barrios community. But that was that tells you the story of the violence, and I guess that's representative of also because Oscar Romero was shot in the heart. So I guess that's what it's representing when the guerrillas decided to take him out. This is the library at his house. His house has become a museum. And it's interesting that this photograph, Father Andy is very creative, is taken because those books were put in question. And I'm going to let Father Andy tell you the story.
So one of the things I found very interesting was, again, this is the See Judge Act. He's out in the fields, all the things that he's seeing and experiencing, and then this is the theology he's reading. Is there another bookshelf? Can you flip to? I just want to see if. Okay, no. Well, one author you can see on there is Hans Kuhn, but there's liberation theology, all of that. So he's continuing to form and educate himself as he's out, and this is his apartment, as he goes out and works and ministers to the people. But what the cardinal told us, and I believe he was working at the seminary during the time of Romero, but he said that when Cardinal Joseph Ratzinger, at the time with the Congregation to the Doctrine of Faith that would become Pope Benedict, the first thing that he wanted to look at is he wanted to see Romero's books, and he wanted to hear the recordings of the homilies that he did on the radio. And there was accusations of Marxism and things like that, and he couldn't find anything to really nail Oscar Romero on. But again, it's just this idea, and it's happening more with Pope Francis as well, this beautiful theology that came out of the South American experience and is shaped by walking and accompanying the people in the structures of injustice. So you want to flip again? You want to say anything about?
This is the entrance of the museum where his house was. So when you come in to the entrance, there is his car. It's right here. It's in perfect condition. I wanted to just jump in and turn it on. It was a Toyota Corona, 1962, I think it was, and it was gorgeous. So, but in the other side was his garden, beautiful entrance where Our Lady is, and under here. So when he was murdered, and they did the autopsy. Am I saying it right? Okay. So when they opened him, So the heart exploded. His chest cavity exploded. It was one of those bullets, right? They were quite modern artillery they had. But anyways, his insides were taken out, and somebody asked for them, and they were interred here. It's under there. And recently they checked on that, and they still perfectly fine, exactly the way it was done years and years ago. 40 years? 20 and 20, yeah, about 40 years. So, and that's what is there, under the care of our mother, our Blessed Mother. So, you want to talk about that?
I was asking the Cardinal about what happened, conversion, and it's hard to see everything here, but he begins to talk about his vocation and being in a place like El Salvador where priests were being expelled, and then they killed Father Rutilio Grande, and who was one of the first that participated with the dialogue with the clergy, with his clergy, and the example and all of that. But I guess he says in here, he gave me a lot of encouragement, especially when he was no longer a collaborator, but an example of fidelity until death. His impulse on the one hand and the need to defend a church so persecuted until the assassination of the priesthood, they prompted me to a pastoral ministry with a greater strength. He talks about how he grew up. When you saw the pictures where the village that he was born, he was with the poor. His first mass, you got to walk, way up in the mountains to get to that village. So all of that would have inspired his priesthood, but to take over as archbishop in a country with so much was going on, and the pressure and the fear and anxiety, all that would have been there, but this evolution that took place, and Enid described it much better than I did. This was a process much before that. He was out with the people. He had heard stories, but it was a wrestle with before he made that stance that really was with Rutilio to stand against the repression and what was happening at that time. So you can flip. And that's he was so yeah, go.
He was really, he's pretty much the one who is continuing the cause of Oscar Romero in El Salvador. He keeps his mind in mind all the time to the people what Oscar Romero did. As a matter of fact, for us, our experience there, he's a hero. He's a national hero. The name of the airport and so many other places where his name is at, and his image everywhere, revered, because he really was the hope of the people in a time when there was no hope for anything. So his death really meant a lot. And it was kind of he resurrected to me in the people of El Salvador. He gave them the hope that if somebody was able to give his life for his people, then they had a chance to survive all that repression. And he has carried the legacy of Oscar Romero in El Salvador and outside. He comes quite often to the United States to do talks and presentations. And there's Father Tom here from St. Joseph that came with us. And I can't remember, he's from Virginia too.
Yeah. So he was, I believe, an auxiliary bishop when Pope Francis became Pope Francis, and he made him a cardinal with the people. And he could not, and the sisters could not have treated us with more hospitality. Almost everywhere, we had like a little bit of a joke. He would come out of the woods and be right there to greet us, and wanted us to really understand the culture. So, and here he is in his apartment right there by the sisters, and explaining and giving us, helping us to understand what happened. So you can flip. So that's right there in his apartment, and you'll notice on the date there, the 24th at 6:15 p.m., he was to do the funeral mass for Dawn Sarita, who I've talked about her here, that really radioed a lot of Romero's messages and things. So he knew they were coming after him. He knew they were looking for him to assassinate him, but he felt that he needed to do her funeral. So there it is marked, and because of everything going on, that's all that's on the calendar there. But he had went to do that service.
In the newspaper that he was going to do the mass at 6:15. So that was the clue for the guerrillas to target him exactly at that time. As a matter of fact, when he passed away, when they murdered him, the people went around. The street has no end, so they went through the hospital, did a roundabout, and then parked right in front of the church. The doors were open, and from the car, how do you say that? Francotirador. The sharpshooter. A sharpshooter just got him right in the heart at the moment when he started consecration, right before that.
And if you want to continue to go. So there's Simple Life, where he took a shower, and then...
Those were his clothes. This where he's closed the day that he was murdered. You see the blood all over. Most of it was they tried to take towels and all kind of stuff, and they saved all that. But these they're in display in his museum. Next. This is his simple room. A small bed, what do you call that? Single. Yes, and that was his. On the other side, there was a little desk where he would do every single night. He will record his sermons, and then next day they will pass that. But thank God to those recordings, the Vatican was able to listen to the things that he was saying. There was nothing that was out of the gospel, right? He was very pastoral. He was not a subversive. He was not telling people to take on arms or anything. He was trying to talk to their consciences and their human part, right? And the last time that he talked, when he was murdered, the night before, he was talking to the armed forces, telling them that they have no right, and nobody could make them kill their brothers. That they should obey the law of God. They should obey God, not a government, not a governor.
So the picture before and then these, you have a picture of Pope Paul VI, who was canonized on, wasn't he canonized on the same day as Oscar Romero? Yeah, he was. He was canonized the same day. But he was really... a hero of St. Oscar Romero and his connection with him, and really, the development that happened under Pope Paul VI and social justice and documents like Populum Progressio, also on evangelization, and this would connect with the South American bishops and their call to justice in their own area. So this was again, it was no coincidence that they were canonized on the same day and his impact on Oscar Romero. There you have some pictures. And then, yeah, I believe that is there. So I'm going to flip again.
And that was the day of his martyrdom, 24th of March, 1980. Here was the shot enter here, but they said there was blood all over. I mean, of course, because they said his chest exploded. There was all his blood started coming from all over the place. They have made, you see where he fell, so he fell kind of sideways because he had his hands open. So he fell kind of sideways, and so what they did was, you can see there's a hard plastic on the floor. You can see the blood, and they trace the way his body fell, and it's right there. You can see it. You can pray to it, contemplate it. It's very emotional, and also there's a piece of, what is it? Was it the one that that's on the wall?
You're talking about the relic?
The relic.
Yeah. There was a cloth that they put on his face to wipe him off, and there was a religious sister that had cancer, and they placed that on her, and she was healed. So a miracle she attributed to St. Oscar Romero. So if you want to flip again. So these were his last words from this Holy Mass, this Eucharist. From the Christian faith, it seems that at this moment the diatribe becomes the body of the Lord, who offered himself redemption of the world, and that in this chalice, the wine transformed into blood that was the price of salvation. Immolated body and this blood sacrificed by men feed us. We may also give our body and our blood to the suffering like Christ, not for himself, but to give concepts of justice and peace, I believe, to our people. Let us unite then intimately in faith at this moment of prayer for Miss Sarita and for us. And right after he would have finished that sentence, and like I said, at the altar before the offering, that's where the gunshot went off, and he was assassinated. So
he probably saw the person because it was right in front of him, right? The car was just parked right in front, and he probably saw them right away. But he was doing what he was doing. He was willing to give his life, and he knew that was probably the way God wanted for him to pass.
And I mean, what you have to understand is when you drive past the churches in El Salvador, they're open. Right? It's very warm there. So it would have been a drive-by. They would have drove by, and one of the religious sisters I remember saying actually saw it. They've never caught who assassinated him, but that's how it took place. And I think the next. So this is the wall outside of his apartment. And these are all the miracles that are attributed to him. And you have to understand the people made him a saint long before he was canonized. And one of the folks on our trip, he was telling me about studying theology, and he used this as an example of what we call the sensus fidelium, or the sense of the faithful, that the people made him a saint before it actually became part of the church and canonized him. And they weren't happy with him about that paper, but I think that's an accurate example of kind of the people and how they recognized what he did and the many miracles through his life. So if you want to keep flipping.
Just want to add, when he was interred at first, it wasn't either in the cathedral. He was in a regular cemetery, and people started doing this signs of gratitude for him. And the government, it was hundreds of them every single day. More appeared onto it. and flowers and everything for a long period of time. And the government started to say, no, this can't happen, because they didn't want to make him a hero, right? So they told them to take those away, and people started doing them. But what they did when they did this, they started collecting them and bring them to the house where the museum is now. So there's walls to the side and around. So this is a small part of it. But there's hundreds of them. Everywhere there's something of Oscar Romero. There are those little thank you in gratitude of his favors. Next. That's the mural.
You want to see?
That mural, I can't remember who made it, but they wanted to, every time people would get out of the house, they would see what Oscar Romero meant for the people. He was, of course, the sun represents Christ, right? And he was always also like a son. He was also a light to the people of El Salvador. And there's all the indigenous and the people the hard workers, right? That are from there. They wanted for them to remember he was la esperanza, the hope of the people, right? And it's a very bright and beautiful, and it's mural, and it's right after you get out of the museum and start walking towards the Chapel of Martyrdom.
If you want to flip again. So now we're in the chapel where he was assassinated. Do you want to read what it says?
Yes, it says, in this altar, Monsignor Oscar Romero offered his life for his people.
Let me flip again. Yeah, I think we gotta. This is right below.
Nobody has more love than those who give their life for their friends. It's an offering of brotherly love to Monsignor Oscar Arnulfo Romero on the 7th anniversary of his martyrdom, the Carmelites, missionary Carmelites of St. Teresa.
So 1980 was when he was martyred. Yeah. So, flip. Oh. I think we flipped around a little bit, but this is outside of now the cathedral where his funeral mass would have been. The body would have been up here at the top and out in, so that the people could gather out all around for his funeral at the cathedral. Flip again. That is the tomb of Romero.
That's the tomb at the cathedral, and it's made of bronze. It's really huge. And you can't see it. Okay, so this part right here, you see there's a mark right there. That's exactly where the bullet entered.
Yeah. So it's in sort of the basement there of the cathedral, so people can go down there and pray. And we had Mass right there. And his Mass, I thought this was significant for our trip, was on the conversion of St. Paul. And so important to us in our trip. Somehow we missed the okay. There's a couple other images. We're almost done. I don't want you to miss, though, if we have them here. I'm thinking, I think we had a couple more of the chapel that was really significant. There's none in there with, okay. I'll have it on a picture on my phone if you want to see it, but can you go back to the church? Flip back again, back to where his chapel was, where he was assassinated. Flip again. Okay, keep going. Okay, so I guess you can't see it here, but It was on this side of the altar. There's an image of him where he would have been standing, when they assassinated him. And of course, you can go up and kneel and put your hands in where the wound was. That was, for me, this was the most moving part of the trip, and I can't help tie it in. And it was good to be with Wheeling Charleston and the folks there, because I had the albon that I was given by a friend, Father John DeBacco, on the day of my ordination. So I was wearing that, and I remember talking to Bishop Avelio and telling him about stuff that's happened in West Virginia and some of the difficulties in the past that at the hierarchical level before Bishop Brennan we had been through. And anyways, so to be wearing the alb that was given on the day of my ordination, and I realized when we were processing into Mass, we were taking his last steps before they would have had assassinated him, and that was like a death, And then I realized when we went up and his altar and walk out, it felt like just a resurrection, just this experience that you, I don't know, you talk about the communion of saints, but you just felt the strength that that Saint Archbishop Oscar Romero gave us. And so then when I'm walking out, I met a local that had known about Saint Oscar Romero and grew up in that village, and her mother, and she had I believe a relative, maybe a brother, that was a Jesuit at the time. So just to see the significance of that little chapel, that was really, really special. So then you can flip on. The only other thing I'm going to add, and then anything Enid has, right there. So they would have been gathered at the cathedral at his funeral mass, all out there. And I really don't know the ins and outs of it. I tried to understand it, but unfortunately, because of the tension, tragically, there was shootings out there that day, right outside the cathedral. Do you want to say anything about that?
In the movie, it was portrayed that it was the government that was shooting to the people so they could scatter. They would scatter. But really, what Cardinal Rosa Chavez told us was that there was a little bit of a gang thing, or something that was spontaneous. Somebody started hitting somebody, and then somebody took a gun out, and then shots rang. And imagine they have lived in this state of panic for so long. So people started scattering, running, thinking that they were shooting at them. And that's what happened. Really, it was nothing was happening directed to them, because the government knew that the world was looking. A lot of people were tuned into what was happening in El Salvador during that day and the day of his funeral. But the mass hysteria happened because of what they have lived. So they were already scarred, and they have been scarred for life now. We met some people over there that their families have told them the tragedies, and also some people were children, but they still, every time there's stories about this, they start crying. They do remember, and they carry that sorrow with them. So it was really, and for us who have not been victims of that kind of government or treatment, right? It's hard to understand, but when you're close to it, it really touches you deep, and hope that this really doesn't continue happening in our countries. But we need to pray. We need to pray a lot and ask God for more people like Oscar Romero, who can help us to guide us in the right way, through the right path. Okay? Oh, this was the last day. Fun thing, we never slept well. The mosquitoes didn't let us. there was tons of battalions of mosquitoes saying, "You come on a pastoral visit, now you will know what is sacrifice." So, but this was an early start. We had to be here at 6 o'clock in the morning. So we got up at 5 o'clock. Our leader, Leah, was a director for Hispanic Ministry in the Archdiocese of Baltimore. She was always cracking the whip. So she wasn't with us, and she called early in the morning at 5. Is everybody up? Is everybody already went for that? You have to be in the bus at 5:30 because we had to come here. And this was in El Salvador, in the capital, so not too far from us. But it was at 6. Normally these children have their mass. And they welcomed us. So beautiful. The children did everything. The whole mass was directed by them. They monitored it. They sang. They were the ushers. They did everything. And that's how they do it all the time. And they had a little program special for us. So you want to say something else?
I just think it just, we're not any different. This shows the world. And I think it was Father Tommy commented, he's like, it's just great to sit and, because we were sitting up front so we could see them, and you see a little guy picking his nose and all that. And then one of these little guys in the front here, I watched him digging through his book bag because his mom or dad gave him some coins to put in the collection, and they were so patient with him. But just fun to watch the kids. In the life of the liturgy, they had a couple of the young girls come up dancing with the Bible to celebrate the liturgy of the Word, and they would raise the Bible up, and everyone would applaud. So just to learn off of the Church of El Salvador and what they were doing at the school here was just like a really good, light way, hope way to end the trip. And that's all I have.